ఇంటర్మీడియట్ విద్యారంగంలో అగ్రగామి మన NSR ఇంపల్స్ ఎడ్యుకేషన్ ఇన్స్టిట్యూషన్. ఐఐటి జేఈఈ అయినా నీట్ అయినా తిరుగులేని విద్యా సంస్థ NSR ఇంపల్స్.
If it is happening across the cell, what do you call that? It's obviously called it as what? Epiblast. It is automatically referred it as what? Epiblast, right? So here when you take this case here, so this is what is happening. Again this crosses the cell wall. So what happens here? It's nothing but epiblast. Epiblast occurs across the cell walls. This is epiblast, cell wall. That means not crossing cell membrane, not crossing the cell membrane, not entering inside the cell. Okay, so here it's happening across the cell wall, came here and again from here again entering into cell wall, again entering into cell wall, right? So let us take like this direction. Here also what occurs is called epiblast. That's why mostly epiblast we say. Why across the cell walls? Across intercellular spaces, across intercellular spaces. That means it enters here, it moves across the cell walls, it moves across the cell walls and coming down here, not crossing the cell membrane, not entering into epidermis, moving across the cell walls, not entered into cortex. Within the cortex also it follows epiblast. Then here it enters into endodermis. That means in epidermis what occurs is epiblast. In the cortex also what occurs is called epiblast. Now coming to endodermis, what do you find in endodermis? Now in case of endodermis, you know the much story about endodermis. So I am writing about endodermis. What do you find in endodermis? In endodermis, in case of roots we find what are called Casparian strips. What are called? Casparian strips. So we call them as suberized cell walls. Suberized cell walls, meaning what? Cell walls are very thick and moreover they are coated with suberin. So here is suberin. This is what is with the suberin. Very thick cell walls you find. This is what is suberin. Now after coming here, suberized cell walls will not permit the water. So what do we say here? We say impermeable to water. Water cannot enter into endodermis. We say impermeable to water. So water will get stopped here. Water cannot enter inside. Water will get stopped here. Water cannot enter. Why? Because here you find suberized cell walls. Suberized cell walls are impermeable to water. Now then what happens here? As they cannot pass here, now what occurs here is directly cell to cell transfer. So in endodermis it follows symplast. In endodermis it follows what is called symplast pathway. Why in endodermis symplast pathway here? Because here the cell walls are very thick, they will not allow with water because they are suberized, so they are impermeable to water. Then how water enters here? Water enters through, I am writing here, water enters through what is called plasma desmata. Water enters through, this is plasma desmata. So one from this end, water enters through plasma desmata, enters inside the endodermis, water and minerals, and from there comes out again through plasma desmata. So in the endodermis what occurs is called symplast, and it requires energy or we call ATP. But again coming out of the endoderms, once it comes out, enters into xylem, again here symplast, but after entering into xylem and phloem, again it occurs across the cell walls. So this will be filled across the cell walls, this will be filled across the cell walls. So then within the xylem, again what occurs is called epiblast, meaning intercellular transport. What occurs here? It's called intercellular transport. Here intracellular transport. What occurs here? Intracellular transport here. So, yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So here symplast is nothing but what? Intra. Intra means within the cell. Intracellular transport. So here from the cortex to endodermis follows symplast. Again from endodermis to xylem follows symplast. In both cases it occurs by plasma desmata, PD plasma desmata, enters into xylem. In the xylem again across intercellular spaces, across the cell walls, across intercellular spaces, again it follows what is called epiblast. I hope it is now very clear. So from in root hair it is epiblast. In epidermis across the cell walls, epiblast. Cortex across the cell walls, not crossing cell membrane, epiblast. So here you can write epidermis means what occurs is epiblast. Okay, in the cortex also it occurs by epiblast. But coming to endodermis it is symplast energy and it occurs through plasma desmata. Coming out from endodermis to xylem again symplast, but within the xylem here again epiblast. Look at the scenarios here, look at the scenarios, here epiblast, here epiblast, here epiblast. That is why we say epiblast pathway occurs mostly. Why? Because does not need energy, does not need energy or ATP. As it does not need energy or ATP, and across intercellular spaces it goes very fast. It occurs at a faster rate here. That is why epiblast occurs mostly. Then in the root system, when you take the root system, where the symplast occurs? Symplast occurs within the endodermis. Guys, I will quickly revise it. Let us talk about the root system. Now absorption of water and minerals we are talking about. Absorption occurs by root hair. In the root hair movement of water started along with the minerals, enters into epidermis across the cell walls and not crossing the cell membrane. So this is across the cell walls is called epiblast. Epiblast occurs mostly intercellular, means the space between two cells, intercellular we call, does not need energy or ATP, no energy. So epidermis is by epiblast, cortex is also by epiblast. Coming to endodermis, what happens here? Endodermis are they made up of Casparian strips. They made up of Casparian strips. In the root anatomy you studied. That means it contains thick suberized cell walls. Cell walls are very thick. Cell walls are very thick because it is coated with waxy material, suberin, and it is impermeable to water. Then how endodermis will take water? At that time, with the help of plasma desmata, water enters inside the cell, water plus minerals, and goes outside the cell with the help of plasma desmata. That means from the cortex to endodermis is symplast, from the endodermis to xylem is symplast, that takes energy and that is intracellular transport, and it occurs through plasma desmata. So endodermis part is very important. Guys, you have to remember in endodermis what occurs is called symplast. Very important. In endodermis what occurs is symplast, and after crossing endodermis enters into xylem. Again in xylem and phloem it is across the cell walls, that is intercellular transport. What occurs here? It's called epiblast. In phloem also it get translocated upward direction. Xylem also it get translocated in upward direction. So what again occurs here is called epiblast. If you look at the scenario here, mostly you find epiblast. Only in the endodermis you find symplast. That's why epiblast occurs mostly. Right. Now you have understood now clearly what is apoplast and what is symplast. Simple, you remember, apoplast is nothing but passive. What you have to remember? Apoplast is nothing but passive, it is a passive pathway or it is a passive transport, meaning here no energy, and how it occurs? Across the cell walls, across cell walls. This is the main difference. And symplast needs energy, and this is nothing but what? Active transport, because it takes energy here, it occurs across plasma desmata. These are the major differences between apoplast and symplast. These are the two major differences between apoplast and symplast. Now it is clear, no? In endodermis what happens is symplast. Now what we have to study? Apoplast and symplast is completed. Now let us go with absorption of water by mycorrhizae, that is by fungi, right. So here if you take, we find in some plants root system. In some plants root system shows a symbiotic association with, it shows a symbiotic association with, right, fungi. Now this fungi is called Mycorrhizae. Whenever fungi showing symbiotic association with the root system. So root system shows symbiotic association with fungi. That means fungi is showing symbiotic association with the root. That is why this fungi is called Mycorrhizae. Myco meaning fungi, rhizae meaning roots. So fungi is in association with the roots. What is mycorrhiza? Myco means fungi, rhizae means roots, fungi is in association with roots, right. Now what happens here? Now fungi, what it will do here is, it provides. So here if you take, I will just write very clearly here. So fungi provides water and minerals. Water and minerals to whom? Fungi provides water and minerals to root system. Okay, how fungi will provide? Fungi will increases surface area of root system. Okay, fungi increases surface area of root system and makes the root to take more water and minerals, means fungi provide water and minerals to root. In return what root will do? Root provides to fungi, root provides food materials. What food materials? Sugars and nitrogenous compounds. Sugars and nitrogenous compounds it will provide to fungi. That means here fungi is providing water and minerals to the root. In return root is giving sugars and nitrogen compounds to fungi. That means fungi is giving water to root, root is giving food material to fungi. So here both are mutually benefited. Fungi is giving water, root is giving food. Both are mutually benefited. Fungi is also benefited, root is also benefited. Fungi gives water, root gives food, both are mutually benefited. When both organisms are mutually benefited, then they show what is called symbiotic association. What do you call this? Symbiotic association, because in this association both organisms are benefited. Now if you look at on the surface of the root, whenever you take, so here this is a root system. Let us take, this is a root here. Okay, so this is root here and this is nothing but the root system. Now on the surface of this, when you see that the root is in association of a network of filaments called fungi, then what it will do? Fungi takes more water. That means it increases surface area. Fungi increases, it occupies total surface area, increases total surface area to take more amount of water, takes large quantity of water. It takes what? Large quantity of water. Fungi penetrates the filaments, network of filaments is called hyphae. You know that, right? What do you call this fungal? This is called hyphae. Network of hyphae, it's called fungi. Now fungi will grow and occupies more surface area. More surface area of the root is being occupied by fungi. As a result, it absorbs large quantity of the water. That's why we said fungi increases surface area of root system for the more absorption of water and minerals. For absorption of water and minerals, right. So here, so fungi is the one which is supplying water to the root, water plus minerals. In return, root is giving food to the fungi. As both are mutually benefited, it's called symbiotic association. Okay, so here when you take especially, let us say that the association, maybe it is of two types. So it is of two types. Mycorrhizae, it is of two types. So what are the two types here? Right? Mycorrhizae, it is of two types. What are the two types of mycorrhizae here? The two types of mycorrhiza. First one is called ectomycorrhiza. What is the meaning of ectomycorrhiza here? That means fungi grow on the surface of root externally, on the surface of the root externally. Okay, so here if you take on the surface of the root externally means on the surface externally, it's called ectomycorrhiza. Okay, so what's happening here? Fungi grow on the surface of the root externally, then it is called ectomycorrhiza. Similarly, we have another category called endomycorrhiza. Endomycorrhiza. What is endomycorrhiza here? The fungi, if you take this is a root system, if this you take this is a root, sometimes through the root hair, the fungi penetrates inside and occupies and grows within the root. When it grows within the root, it is said to be as endomycorrhiza. So what you will write here? Fungi grow within root system, within root. Fungi grow within root, enters inside the root system, inside the root system. When fungi grows inside the root system, it's called endomycorrhiza. When fungi grows externally, it's called ectomycorrhiza. Right. Now let us see how it penetrates externally, internally. Let us make a clear note of it. Now before that, once again let me give you a quick revision of this. Look at here, what you study here. Absorption of water also occurs by mycorrhiza. Whenever roots are in combination with the fungi, they absorb more water. Now root system in this case provide water and minerals to the fungi. Fungi makes the increase in surface area of the root system for absorption of water and minerals. In return, what will do here root? Simply taking water, it will not keep quiet. Okay. In return, it supplies sugars and nitrogenous compounds to the fungi. Both are mutually benefited. That's why it's called symbiotic association. Right. So, here the fungi increases surface area of the root system for more absorption of water and minerals. So, in this case, if you see fungi is there, it occupies more surface area and takes large quantity of water. Now, if you look at in this case, mycorrhiza, it is of two types, ectomycorrhiza, endomycorrhiza. What is ectomycorrhiza? Fungi grows on the surface of the root externally. Now, if you look at here, in this case, can you see the fungi growing externally? Yes, outside the root. It is called ectomycorrhiza. What is endomycorrhiza? Fungi grow within the root. Fungi will enter through root hair, enters inside the root. It takes a shelter within the root system. Inside the root system, then it is called endomycorrhiza. Let us continue further. Let us take the TS of root again, TS of root system. Once again we are taking the same example. For the study of Epiblast and Symplast also we have taken the example root system. Similarly, for the study of Mycorrhizae also we are taking the root system. So, what you can see here, let us take the first layer itself is called epidermis. So, this is a layer, it is called as what? Epidermis. Now, this contains a root hair, it is like this, right. Now, below the epidermis we find cortical cells like this. So, this is cortex, parenchymatous cells with intercellular spaces, it is called as cortex. Then coming to this is called as what? Cortex. I am writing down, this is called cortex. Okay, this region is totally called cortex. Now, within then down to the cortex we find another layer. Now, this layer it's called as endodermis, that is why I am trying to make it as thick layer. So, this is called as endodermis. So, here this is what is called endodermis. Okay, what we call this? This is we call endodermis. One second. Now, we are in the transverse section of the root. So, we take the first layer as epidermis, next layer as cortex. What is the thick layer I have drawn? So, here we find epidermis, layers of the cortex. What the thick layer I have drawn here, which you can see very clearly. What is this? This is nothing but endodermis. Now, we know further if you go into the anatomy part, what do we find? We find again a layer called pericycle, right, and then what you find here, you find the thick layer of cells called xylem, and just beneath the xylem you find the layer of cells called phloem. So, here this is xylem. So, this all here what you find is nothing but xylem. Okay. So, here the layer of cells what you find here, it is nothing but phloem, right. So, you can fill the diagram if here like number of cells, right, yes. So, here when you see ectomycorrhiza means it stays outside. This is ectomycorrhiza. It stays on the surface of root. Where does the fungi stays? In this case, fungi stay on the surface of the root. Then it is said to be mycorrhiza. But we have to discuss about endomycorrhiza. So, when you talk about endomycorrhiza here, what happens endomycorrhiza? This goes inside endo, it goes inside root. It goes inside root. So, now we are speaking about what? Endomycorrhiza. So, here endomycorrhiza, it goes inside the root hair, goes like this. Now, it follows Epiblast movement, until here what it follows? Epiblast. Even fungi movement is also Epiblast. Why? Because fungi is carrying water. Endomycorrhiza, it goes inside, spread inside the epidermis, inside the cortex, enters into endodermis. But in endodermis, when fungi want to enter, in endodermis, it shows what is called symplast. Where symplast is shown? In case of endodermis. Even if the fungi enters inside the root, in the root hair it is Epiblast, epidermis it is Epiblast, across the cortex it is Epiblast, coming to endodermis it is symplast, Okay. Then after this it enters inside, then again here what it follows is again symplast. In endodermis it undergoes symplast, very important, and after that it again enters into xylem. In xylem it is again Epiblast. Okay, that is Epiblast. Coming to endodermis it is symplast. Now, in some cases what happens? Mostly what occurs is called, as we discussed, is nothing but Epiblast. Mostly what occurs is called Epiblast. So, what we write here? Epidermis is Epiblast. Cortex is also Epiblast. Coming to endodermis, it is symplast. Coming to xylem, it is Epiblast, because it consumes very less energy. Sometimes what happens? In some cases, from the beginning of epidermis, it follows symplast. So, here this is symplast movement. What I am drawing now, symplast movement or symplast pathway. Now, in this case what happened? Sometimes even we find symplast pathway, that is it enters into epidermis through plasmodesmata. It enters through plasmodesmata, that is epidermis also symplast. Then here also symplast. Cortex also it follows symplast. Here also it follows symplast. From here to here symplast, enters into xylem, but in xylem here it follows Epiblast. Okay. So, what I am trying to show in this case, mostly it is Epiblast until endodermis. In endodermis symplast, again it is Epiblast, right. But coming to, in some cases what happens is symplast pathway occurs from the beginning. Why? Because in some cases, for example, the plants growing in high salt concentration or in water stress condition, water is very less, and moreover high salt concentration is there. So, at that time the concentration of water has to move with energy. Then what happens? From the beginning with the epidermis, it follows through plasmodesmata, it follows what is called symplast. Okay. Epidermis symplast, crossing from the epidermis to cortex symplast, cortex to endodermis symplast, endodermis to xylem symplast, but within the xylem the water has to go in upward direction to the shoot, here it follows apoplast. So here simplest, as you have understood, cell to cell movement, that is why it is called intracellular movement, and it needs what is called ATP, and you know this is called active transport. Got it? Right. Now let me take good example for example called pinus. Guys, did you remember we discussed about pinus? Okay, pinus shows, very important, take it as a note point, you can take it as a note point here. Pinus shows obligate association with, obligatory association with mycorrhiza, or you can take with fungi. Okay, obligate association. Obligate association means here without this it cannot survive. What is obligate association? Without this it cannot survive. Obligation, compulsory, fungi should come in contact with the root, otherwise pinus cannot germinate. That is called obligate association. Obligate means compulsory. The pinus seed has to germinate means its compulsory should show the relation with a fungi. Fungi should show growing with root, then only the pinus will germinate. So what is the important statement here? What is the note point? Here we say pinus seed cannot germinate, and establish until unless it come in contact with, cannot germinate and establish without mycorrhiza. Without mycorrhiza. That means when it come in contact with mycorrhiza, that means whenever pinus seed is there, this is pinus seed. If the seed is come in contact with the fungi, then only the pinus seed will undergo germination. It will undergo germination. Suppose pinus seed is without mycorrhiza. If this is pinus seed, now it is not getting contact with no fungi. If it is no fungi, then the pinus seed cannot germinate. It cannot germinate. Are you getting the difference here? What is the difference here? You can see here the pinus seed, when it come in contact with the fungal filaments called mycorrhizal filaments, then only the pinus seed will germinate and establish into a plant. The pinus seed will germinate when it come in contact with fungi, right? Because whenever pinus seed fall in the soil, it await for the fungi. Fungi automatically will come in search with the pinus seed. Both show symbiotic association because fungi gives here water. In return, pinus seed will give food to the fungi. Both shows obligatory association. Without this it will not survive. Without this it will not survive. With this it will come in search. Both are mutually benefited. Compulsory pinus seed has to germinate means it need the help of fungi. That is why we got pinus shows obligate association with mycorrhiza. That means what is the important statement? Pinus seed cannot germinate and establish without mycorrhiza. Until unless it come in contact with mycorrhiza, pinus seed cannot germinate. So here pinus seed come in contact with fungi, it undergone the process called germination. When pinus seed is not found with the fungi is not growing in the soil where pinus seed has fallen down, then it cannot germinate. It will cannot germinate at all. Such kind of relation is called obligate association. Okay, now you got it. Now let us quickly revise about the thing we have studied. Absorption of water by mycorrhiza. Not only root hairs and secondary tertiary roots, Sometimes fungi also helps them to take water from the surrounding soil. How? For example, again we are taking tiers of root. First layer is epidermis, next layer is cortex, next is endodermis, pericycle, xylem and phloem. So what happens in this case here? Sometimes fungi grow on the surface, it is called ectomycorrhiza. In this case we are speaking about endomycorrhiza. How endomycorrhiza grows? Inside the root hair it will enter. It also follows apoplast. In the epidermis it follows apoplast and it grows across intercellular spaces. What you call the space between these two cells? The space between these two cells is called intercellular space. What do you call that? Intercellular space. Space between these two cells is called intercellular space. It grows across and coming to endodermis, surely it must and should follow symplast in the endodermis. Why? Because we discussed suberized cell walls impermeable to water. So compulsorily with the help of plasma decimator. So what you find here is plasma decimator, compulsory it should undergo symplast and after entering into xylem again it is apoplast. In some cases what happens, from the beginning it follows symplast, that means epidermis is symplast. See here cell to cell movement, that means intracellular transport within the cell to next cell, within the cell to next cell through plasma decimator. Epidermis is symplast, cortex is symplast, endodermis is symplast, but coming to xylem it is apoplast. In some plants which are growing in water stress condition, from the beginning they undergo symplast until xylem. So they need energy, it is active transport, cell to cell movement, this is intracellular, that consumes lot of energy. So this is what is absorption. Coming to pinus. Pinus shows obligate association with mycorrhiza. What is obligate? Compulsory. If that fungi is there, then only it says I will germinate. If fungi is not there, it will not germinate. Obligate association meaning compulsory. It is in need of fungi. Pinus seed cannot germinate and establish without mycorrhiza. That is the meaning of the statement. Now look at the picture. Pinus seed got with the fungi. Fungi is giving water to the pinus, in return pinus is giving food, then only there is a germination. Suppose pinus seed not come in contact with fungi, there is no fungi, it cannot germinate at all. Okay, so this is nothing but absorption of water by mycorrhiza.